All right, now that the landscape's done, we're going to be talking about adding vegetation throughout our project. That way it looks populated and it doesn't look so bare. So I'm just going to bring up the reference photo, right? Just to go over some of the landscape, right? So we've got these like larger trees with smaller bushes here. And let me switch views. And we've got these like sandy looking grasses here, okay? Small little shrubs, some larger plants here. But you can see it's kind of like the same plant, right? Like this is one asset, this and this are another. We've got another here, right? 3 of these. And then we've got our taller plants, right? And so before, when we were talking about like the landscaping and everything, this is also another reason, you know, just based on the actual terrain of the project, we know it's not a flat site. Like there's plenty of hills that you could see here. It's not just a flat, and just plenty of trees, a diverse variety of trees. So this is really going to help us hide the horizon line. You can also see like down here, it kind of looks like almost like mountains, but they're really just big hills. So you would never just see that horizon line. So that's a lot of reasons why we've done all this. So now let's start thinking about the assets we're going to choose for this, and let's start getting them in there. So we went through content, materials, landscape. So now to get started, let's go over to nature, and we're going to go into our place mode, right? So there's a couple different assets I'm looking for, right? I want to start with some of the smaller assets, you know, those grassy dune looking ones, these guys right here. So to do that, I'm going to go over to grass, and I'm going to go right down to this one. Okay, so this is close enough. There's another one that looks also pretty similar, but this, I like that there's like a couple different versions of them. So I'm going to grab this, and as you can see, it's like a good size. So I'll bring up the reference photo one last time, and you can see that it's really filled on this right side, a little bit in there, and out here. So there's a couple ways of handling this, right? You have the single placement mode, which, you know, this is going to take us forever. There is the line placement tool, the cluster placement, and then the paint tool. So let's cover each of these. Single placement, every time I click, that is dropping down an asset, right? Line placement is basically from point A to point B, right? To generate assets. And as you can see here, we've generated a bunch. It's going to vary the scale and the rotation, which is really nice. And you can easily just add a different amount of assets. You can always edit the nodes, which is really nice. You can randomize the spacing along the line and randomize their direction, because in the real world, these are all organic plants and they're all growing at different rates. So we don't want them, you know, to be all in the same direction, right? And then this, if you're curious what this is it will place it directly on the ground, and based on the normal of the mesh, say it's like on an angle, it will either go like this or like that, right? So that's what this guy's for. So I'm going to offset this just a little bit because it's hard to plant everything in a line. Like that for this region. Let's look at our asset one more time. Yep, that's fine. And it looks like there was another row as well. So let's do that. Okay, and let me make sure I'm on line placement. And I'm just gonna do that and lower the amount of items. And I'm gonna wind up deleting this guy right after. Perfect. Okay. So then we have cluster placement. This is going to place several at a time. So what I want to do is I'm going to keep it super tight. Going to randomize the position a little, maybe add a couple more. That way I can like fill this area in. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to wind up deleting those after and moving some things over because it's not perfect. Okay, and then we've got another cluster here and another cluster there. Just going to go here, here, and over here. And just for the sake of consistency, I'll drop some there and here. All right, perfect. So now that we've done that, I'm gonna hit check mark. And as you can see, like we managed to place like 30 different assets in a very short period of time. The last one is paint. This, if you literally want to draw, yeah, you've got that as an option. But for this, I don't think it's needed. So I'm just gonna erase these guys. Yep. And so you can see by going too far, it will actually remove the clusters we made, right? So you have to be a little careful with this, right? So I'm just going to hit cancel and edit, and then I'm going to go back and just place my cluster. Perfect. And what's nice about the cluster is it does turn it into an individual object. So look at that. So I'm just clicking and dragging on the gray node. Okay, so we've got all the grays here. So the other thing I want to do is I can actually customize all these at the same time. So if I go over here to select all identical objects, I can now start changing some of the saturation and the overall look of this, right? So if I want to lower how much green there is, I can just lower this, right? Because if you remember, it looks kind of like very dune-like, very pale. So I can come here and start customizing the look. So now it's all this kind of yellowy color, right? So that's how we do that. We can also play with the transparency, but I'm not going to do that because I think it's totally fine. If you're curious what these guys are, this is a way for you to distribute items. So again, if we had everything in a line, this is how you could do that, or have it all come into one spot. These are selection methods, and then these are replace tools. So like if you didn't like this asset, you could just click this and then replace it from something else. So again, you're never penalized by placing something. It's very easy to swap it out. Okay, so we got that. Now let's move on to the next one. Let's talk about these like shrubs right here. Okay, so it's like a medium-sized shrub. I'm gonna go back to place, and let's look for shrubs. This might be under plants. That's not bad. This is better, in my opinion. So I like this, but they're kind of small. How about this guy? That's a little bit better. So now I'm just going to grab a line placement, and I could run it like this. So check this out. Before we were only doing one node at a time, I can actually add on to that, right? If I hold control, see what's happening? I'm getting more nodes. So now it might look a little weird because I've got this like curve here. I don't have the asset I selected, so I'm just going to replace here. I'm going to boost the number, and I'm going to change the smoothness. We want straight lines, right? We don't want that smoothness. Okay, and that's pretty good. But what I want to do is actually go and scale these up, right? And so if they're too close to each other and I scale, they're going to start overlapping. So watch this. I'm going to subtract a little bit, and I'm going to hit check mark. And using that trick I showed you before, I'm going to click this, select all identical objects, and now I'm going to go over to scale. Okay, hold down shift and scoot him this way. Perfect. Then here I've got, you know, a bunch of different plants on top of each other, so I'll move that out of the way. Okay, perfect. So now I'm going to do the same thing on the other sides. I'm going to look at the reference photo. Okay, and I'm going to place away. What's nice about the line tools is it's not just one asset, right? You can actually have a bunch of different assets. That's what this guy is right here. So if I wanted, you know, just for illustration's sake, I can click this and swap it out to be a different asset. You see that? So if you have a asset that's got a bunch of different shapes, like let me do this, you can kind of like blend them all together. So this is a drastic switch, right? But it's to illustrate the point that it's very easy to do that. You can just double click and that will remove it, right? So that looks great. I'm going to lower the amount of items because I want to go and scale them, and it looks good. So I'm going to do that for the rest of them, so I can just scale all at the same time. We've got some here, and that's that. So we're going to go back to line placement. I'm going to go this way, hold control, go this way. Make sure the toggle is correct. I'm going to hit check mark. Now I want to select all these again. Select all identical object. It's even going to select those over there. Isn't a big deal because once I do this, they're all going to be the same scale. Okay, that's perfect. So we wanted it to be just a little bit bigger. That's great. Awesome. And you could go in later and like lower the scale of each, because what happened was we did, you know, just like overwrite and make everything the same scale. But you know, that would take forever, right? So to make things faster, again, let's go back to select all identical objects. We have randomized rotation and randomized scale here. So check this. So I move things over, and now I can randomize the size, and I can choose the percent here. So you see what's happening? So there's a 7.7% difference. This is a 38% difference, right? So we just want a little bit, right? We want some variation. So again, this is what I was saying. You're not being penalized if you forget a step. You can always go back, select, and fix. Totally fine. So that looks great. If you want, you can also customize like the color of that green if you think it's a little too green, but I think that's totally fine. The next thing we have is we've got a couple more plants I can place here, and these big guys right here, right? So let me grab some more of these. What I could do, if I'm feeling really lazy and I don't want to go to place, I can actually hold Alt and make a copy. So that way I don't have to go into place, and I'm just going to line them up. Okay, perfect. Okay, cool. Yeah, and so these guys, when we originally did the project, it was like for colored flowers, and they wound up being removed in the project here. They were just like these simple, like yellowy shrubs. So let's find something that looks similar. Okay, so let's find something. It's got some yellow to it. Yeah, these are fun. And then I'm going to shrink them later. Yeah, like these. Okay. I'll add some color here. Okay. Add a little bit of orange. And again, I'm just trying to make it pop a little. Yeah. And then I'm probably going to just desaturate a little bit because I don't want it to be too bright. But it helps having all these different varieties. That way it looks a little more realistic. So I'm just going to select all these guys. And I'm just gonna lower this a bit. And you can also use this to kind of customize, yeah, how much of the green is getting picked up. Okay, great. All right, I'm gonna hit deselect. Good, you can see a bunch of color there. That's nice. All right, so the next thing we've got these big guys. So let's find those. And again, I know we're going by photo, but to go by the plan, it's the same exact process, right? You're just like looking at the key, finding a similar species, and then placing it. So I'm gonna go for like a broadleaf, but it's gonna be like a super small guy. And when it comes to scale, I can just look at the human in relationship to the asset. So we want something that looks kind of like round, coming from the bottom up. So you know what, I'm gonna go back to plants and let's just grab some azaleas. Yeah, this is totally fine. Yep, and it was this peg right here, so I'm gonna place that there. This one, I'm gonna shrink that, and this one, I'm gonna shrink it. So I'm gonna go over to select, and then I'm going to scale it down. Okay, perfect. I'll do the same thing for this and this one. I'm gonna hold control so I can do both at the same time. Perfect. Yep. And you don't need to get the same exact asset as me. Like if you like something else and you think it's a better option, totally go for it. All right, so then over here we have some taller trees. So let's look at the photos. We've got these tall guys, and then we've got some tall evergreens over here, or medium-sized evergreens here. So let's do that. I'm going to place again. Let's go over to broadleaf. We'll want something that's rounded up top with like a nice long trunk. I actually like these a lot. So this is a good option where we've got all these different assets. So this is actually perfect for line placement because now I can do this, replace that, add all these different variants of it in here. Perfect. And the amount is way too much, so I'm going to lower this. Somewhere around there. Okay. And let's just randomize all this slightly. Okay. Give it some variety. Perfect. And we want to add those tall evergreen plants as well. Alright, so let's look under conifers, see if we can find something similar. Yeah, I think this guy actually fits the bill. So I'm going to grab him, and I'm going to do the same thing with our line placement. And I'm going to go like this, go around the corner here. We're going to add a bunch, and I know it's putting the beech trees in. It's totally fine. Okay, because I'm going to fix that by deleting these. And select that as replacement. There we go. So what I'm going to do is just fix some of my my points here. Perfect. And I'm just going to add a lot more. Okay, we're going to keep everything random. I want this to be dense, but not too dense. Okay, perfect. Go check mark that. I'm going to do the same thing here. And make sure you're on the right mode. Line placement. Holding control. Go out there. Okay, perfect. Alright, and then here I can add a bunch of taller trees as well. So I'll just do that. But you can see like how fast this goes, right? Like once you have the assets, you're pretty much good to go. So this, I'll grab my beach again. Replace this. Okay. Lower the amount. I'm gonna drop in another version in here. Okay, cool. If I want, I could even add another backup layer, something that's a little more full. So this I actually want to surround the whole property. So watch this. So I'm gonna go out here. I'm gonna click right around here. This way. And I'm going to go this way. Okay, I'm going to bring this out a little bit more. I'm going to change the line smoothness, right? Okay. And now let's find something a little fuller. Okay, so I'm going to go back. And we're on broadleaf. Let's see. I don't mind this. Let's replace that. This might be, yeah, that's a good size. Perfect. Just looking for anything big up top. Okay, we like maples. There we go. Perfect. Add some lower ones in there. Let's increase the number, right? Because we want this to be filled. Add some more. Go back. Okay, like this. This is full. Okay, we'll bump this up. Cool. And now if I do a little fly. Okay. Could use some more lower depth. And you'll notice here that our landscape cutter from before was cutting through this. So we've got to come back and fix it. That's one of the issues with switching our grass to 3D grass. So I'll fix that in a moment. But let's keep working on this. Okay, and I'm going to crank this up even more. Okay, good. Yeah. And what we can do is even drop a backdrop in here. That way it's a little more performant and it, and then we don't have to place as many trees. So I'm going to check mark for now. Leave that there. As you can see, we've got a lot of good vegetation so far. Okay, cool. So let's just fly around and see if we missed anything. We've got some spots here we could fill real quick. And back here. So I'm just going to grab similar assets. I'm going to click this. I'm going to hold down Alt and drag out. Okay. And I'm just going to place some more assets around here. Put a nice tree here. Shrink this a bit. Do that after. This one, that'll be nice there. Do one here. Okay, perfect. So let's shrink. Great, that'll help screen the air conditioners there. We'll add some more plants here. Let's go under flowers. And let's grab something. Yeah, perfect. We'll add a couple of these. Perfect. Okay, so now let's fix this issue. So we've got our landscape cutter. So that was under utilities, right? So I'm going to go here and I'm just going to change the size of this. Okay, that way it's just for the pool. Okay, great. And if you remember, it was cutting this area too. So I'm just going to hold down Alt. Okay, cool. So then that's fixed and it's not removing too much. All right, perfect. So now, one thing I want to talk about is this whole time we've been working, we actually have all of our assets on the same layer. So you notice here, this is layer 1. And if I go to my nature, this is all layer 1, right? So that's not great because if I were to turn this off, let me switch to layer 2, turn it off, everything's on that layer, right? So obviously not too organized. So check this out. Let's go to layer 2. Let's call this Vegetation. And I'm going to click one of my assets here. And I'm going to go over here, select all objects in the same category. That's all my vegetation, right? Because that belongs under here, nature. I can switch this to vegetation. And now when I turn this off, let me switch to layer 1. There we go. So although we didn't do our layers earlier on, we were able to go in, select everything with a couple clicks, and then move it to the correct layer. All right, and let's work on finishing this up, and then we'll move on to the next step. All right, so to wrap up the vegetation, let's add some trees up here in the front, and then we'll also add some trees in the background. So if you remember from the reference photo, we've got a bunch of trees here, and this is just gonna, kind of hide our background and everything. So let's get working on that. So I'm gonna go back here, I'm gonna go back to nature. And before I hit place, I just want to make sure I switch my layer. So I'm going to click this. Now I'm on the vegetation layer, meaning anything I press or place moving forward is going to be directly on this layer. Okay. So it's good to be super organized. That way, like we were talking about before, you can easily toggle things on and off, right? And you're not going to be able to turn off your default layer. So if you ever run into this issue where you're trying to turn it off and it says cannot hide active layer, you need to move to a different layer. Then you can turn it off. Okay, so I'm going to go back to vegetation. Let's go to place. Let's find a tree that looks similar to that. I think this one's totally fine. We can place this. We'll do a single place. There's one like right here. And there was another one like right here and here. Perfect. I'll add another one here. Okay, and here. Okay. So then over here in the back, right, this is basically just a bunch of random trees, and we can actually use the cluster trees. So if you go right over here to clusters, these are like hundreds of different trees. So check this out. So if I grab this and I click one of these, look at that. But these are all the tops. So look at this. If you look here, they're actually missing all the trunks and everything. So that's what these guys are for, right? So let's find a style we like. Okay. All right. So let's go with clusters, and let's go with the broadleaf RT. And these are like lower quality, but what's nice about them is like they're going to be so far away. We don't need them to be super detailed, right? It's more to just fill the backdrop. So I'm just going to place a couple of these Just that way we're not seeing any of the horizon. Okay. All right, perfect. I'm gonna go to place. Great. So now when I go in, and I look, you see how that's blocking it? And what's nice about the landscape tools with Lumion and everything, if I start like raising or lowering the terrain, the trees are gonna go with it. So watch this. If I change the height, you see what's happening there? So it's not like it's gonna be floating, it's actually gonna stick to it. So I'm just gonna do some final placements. Just make sure everything is kind of organic looking. Okay, perfect. All right, so now we've got all these blue poles, right? We no longer want them. So to just turn them off, just switch over to materials, and we are going to click on this pole, and right here where it says new, just switch it to invisible right here. And that's going to turn it off. Perfect. So they should be gone, but you'll notice that it looks like the interior face is the default material. So I can actually turn that off as well. Hopefully that doesn't have an impact on the house model, just in case there's any like backward faces that are not invisible. So let's just make that invisible, and we'll do a double check. Just make sure everything's appearing correctly. Okay. All right. Perfect. Okay, great. So that's all there. And that was that for the vegetation. That was not bad at all. And so now with that invisible material, it won't appear, it won't render. You will get this little like half-tone hatch you can kind of see. That way you know it's like there, but it's not really there. It's not going to render, which is great. So I'm going to hit save changes. Okay, cool. All right, so now that we've placed everything, we've done our materials, we can talk a little bit about lighting. So in the next video, we're going to get into our lighting settings and tweak things to look a little bit more realistic.